Welcome back, listeners. As you all know, my name is Cade Curtis, your tour guide on Learning from Friends. It's a pleasure to have you come back and join us here. This time, I'm recording in my kitchen as my usual spot where I'm not outside. I'm not being able to kind of provide a little bit more ambience noise, but that's okay. That's a cool thing about it. You never know where I'm going to be recording at. And it's currently June. This episode, I don't know when it's going to come out. Probably maybe September, October, whatever it is. So welcome, hello from June. This is your past calling and goes, what's up? So as you all know, I do my mom's quote of the day. This one's a longer one than normal. And it comes from Lori Deschene of tinybuddha.com. I love this kind of stuff. And this was a good one when my mom sent this to me. I was having a rough day. And I was like, oh, yes, save this one for later. And Rose is a very important one to use this on, which is our guest today, which I'll introduce you in a minute. You might think that you don't matter in this world, but because of you, someone has a favorite mug to drink their tea out of each morning that you bought them. Someone hears a song on the radio and it reminds them of you. Someone has read a book you recommended to them and gotten lost in the pages. Someone remembered a joke you told them and smiled to themselves on the bus. Someone now likes themselves that little bit more because you made a passing comment that made them feel good. Never think you don't have an impact. Your fingerprints can be wiped away from the little marks of kindness that you've left behind. Great quote, great stuff to be able to have that. And as a teacher, it definitely reminds me all the time to humble myself there. So the topic we're going to speak on today, I'm speaking with a person that I've known now for over 2 decades now, pretty much. Her name is Rose Dye. She's an artist, a cat mom, a nerd of all sorts, and most of all, one of the most honest and loyal individuals to both her family and her friends. She was even actually my date to senior prom. It was awesome. That's had one of the best times of my life there. And she's a flight attendant who now actually has worked her way up to the ladder and now trains the trainers that train the flight attendants for a major airline. It's hilarious going through like, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So Rose, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Kate. I'm happy to be here. Yeah, that quote kind of gave me like the chills a little bit.
It should.
When you were reading it, because I was like, oh, that's nice. And right now, y'all can't see it, but I have a nice little mug with 3 handles.
Yeah, both mugs we're drinking out of today were given to me by my aunt-in-law. Yeah, aunt-in-law. And it's just fun little stories.
Yeah. I mean, like mugs have stories behind them. So it's a great quote today.
It is.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Can you give us like a visual picture, paint us for us of who in the world is Rose?
Oh my goodness, I wish I knew. I think the biggest way to kind of describe me is a little quirky, right? I think back to high school when you and I got voted most unique, right? And we ended up in trash cans.
That was amazing.
It was so good. But like looking back on that, I don't think about high school a lot, but I mean, it really kind of captures who I am as a person. I feel like I'm pretty unique in general.
That's very true.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. But just I try to be open and caring when I can be. And so constant lifelong learner, trying to be kind to people. But like you said, cat lover, trying to just be passionate and learn new things. And that's really who I am. So constant amoeba.
There you go. Yes. Now, since we went to high school together, we actually ran track together in elementary school for a little while, which is funny. And we forgot about that for a long time. And we never met up until middle school.
Yep.
That's when we kind of met back up. And, it's been kind of hung out in similar circles.
Yeah.
And then once we got into high school, we really kind of started to reconnect a little bit more. And it's just been kind of a blast. Do you have any funny stories or little fond memories that we have shared over the years? And I have a couple that we'll just kind of banter back and forth a little bit on this.
Oh, I was about to say, I think one of my favorites is you already mentioned going to prom, right? But at that time, who do you go to prom with, right? There was like this whole thing, especially when you're not necessarily kind of like that stereotypical norm because, I wasn't dating anybody at the time.
Same here.
Yeah. I mean, kind of doing my own thing. And I remember being like, Cade's a good person. Let's go with Cade.
Yeah, I sat behind you in math class.
Yeah.
And we both got nominated and put on court. And we're like, what? Sure, let's go together.
Let's go. And then we ended up getting that really cool blue color, in our dress and everything. We look sharp.
Dude, we look great.
I mean, we look so good. So I'm just saying, thinking back on that, you're welcome for me making you look that good.
Yep, you did. And it was one of the best times I had because I'd did not have the best of junior proms. And I was just like, I don't want to really go senior year kind of deal. And we literally, I think, danced every song but like 4.
Yeah.
Like we literally just got out there and just had a blast, and there was no expectations of anything. It was just like, I thought it was funny. We got back in the car and everybody's like falling asleep, and she goes, if I fall asleep on you, just don't take it personal or think this is anything. I'm like, I don't care. Like, whatever.
It's all good. Pass
Yeah,
out.
just pass out. Let's go.
See, I wish I had such a good memory about all that. I feel like my brain doesn't hold as many memories as I wanted to. So I can remember like general ideas and pictures a lot of times.
Yeah.
So I love the fact that you're like, I can remember this. And in my head, I do remember dancing a lot.
Yeah,
I remember being exhausted, but I can't put myself back in that time, right? My brain doesn't quite work that way.
And I was happy with the way we did it. We split everything down the middle. It was like, hey, I'm not paying for your dinner. You're not paying for, I'm not paying for your half of the limo.
Yep.
Like, this is the way it's going to be.
That is a progressive. I'm just saying more people should be like that. Split it down the middle, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, that's just,
we can be matchy and have a fun time, and we can have a conversation. It doesn't have to be necessarily gendered in roles. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to be boyfriend. It doesn't have to be girlfriend. It can just be like, hey, man, I'm going with friends.
Exactly.
And just hanging out.
And have a good time.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, every relationship that you have is a relationship, right?
Yes.
Everybody wants to put this kind of like
identity
thing on it. Yeah. Right.
But I love everyone. Like, I love you. This is great. Like, we don't say it enough at times. If we mean it, you could say to anybody.
But like, even with friendships, you get what you put into them, right? So at the end of the day, that's part of what's great about you and your circle of friends and like having you in my life and everything. I know that I might not talk to you for years, but you're my friend.
It's been 6 years since we've seen each other last, or maybe 5.
And I mean, I showed up at the door this morning and you just made me feel like I was at home.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Walked in, hang out with my cats, and we literally talked for probably about 2 hours before we started.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is how friendship works.
Exactly.
Right?
Just pick right up where you left off. One of my fond memories, it's hilarious. We were doing a short film for my brother when he was in college. We're going through, we finished filming and we're exhausted and just kind of everyone's trying to figure out what to do. And one of my friends goes, let's have UFC fights in the middle of the yard. And we're going through and everybody's fighting and just doing little things in the yard. And Rose goes, I want to fight someone. And so we're like, all the guys were like, I want nothing to do with this. And I'm like, you know what, let's go.
Yeah,
let's go.
Let's go.
So
I remember the Sphinx cats that your brother had.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
The
and
cats,
how they like had to wear little sweaters.
Yeah, they hated the sweaters, but they were always like cuddled up in little odd spots. They would find their blankets and they're just like, that was it.
I just love cats. If I could cuddle every cat, I got a sticker to put on my truck that says, tell your cat I said, pss, pss, pss.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you have any other fun stories you want to throw in here before we kind of make our next step forward?
I mean, the last time I saw you, you came to Battle and Brew.
Where we did wrestling trivia.
Yes.
Professional wrestling trivia.
Yeah, we did pretty good on that.
Yeah, we did.
But I mean, honestly, when I think of Cade, I think of warmness. So, yeah. I know it's not memories like you want.
Oh, no. That is memories.
Yeah.
That totally is. It's a fond moment. Now, I have to ask before my wife, gets on to me for not asking the question of the first time y'all met, the only time y'all met, I think, was you're like, hi, my name is Rose. Do you want to play with my cats? And you're like, what? And she was caught off guard. She goes, yeah, I have a laser system in where I can be able to have a camera and play with my cats. And she was like, what? And she didn't do it, but she goes, she wants to know if you still have it and can she play with your cats?
Oh, yes, definitely. Yeah. I've got this little camera set up and I've got one that you can shoot treats at them, which is really fun.
That's awesome.
Because little Lou comes running out and, Luna is a big girl. She can't help it. She just likes food and everything, which I love. But she's mainly gray, right? And so whenever I log into this particular camera, you just see her little white fupa, just white, as she's running towards the camera. And I'm like, there she goes. Oh, she's so happy.
That's so awesome.
So yeah, she most definitely can play with my cats.
That will need to be arranged at some point because she just remembers that it's Queen of Day and she goes, that needs to be in your things to ask her. And I was like, a podcast episode, we'll add it in.
My cats live a very digital life. They love me for pets, right? But everything else in their life is automated.
And we're all servants. That's the thing. We're at the end of the day, we're all servants to those cats.
I work hard so they can have a
you
good life.
choose the dog, but the cat chooses you. And you live in its house.
That's so true. But I got both of my cats at the Turkey County Humane Society, actually.
We got ours in the Marietta Cat Humane Society.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I have a few friends that have like purebred cats and, I just love my little trash cats.
Yeah. At the end of the day, there's still love.
Yeah.
Still had that whole things to it.
They're perfect. If I could adopt a raccoon, I would.
Raccoon. I would adopt a possum. I like
Ooh.
possums. That's an interesting one.
Yeah, but like
Raccoons are just, in my opinion, just nasty. And they have all these crazy little claws. Possums do too, but
they're
possums
little
are
hands.
possums are the nature's garbage people, and they eat ticks, they eat all this different stuff that we need to get rid of. Raccoons go through your trash and more susceptible to rabies and stuff. They're bringing them in.
Okay, well, you didn't have to go with that. Have you ever seen them try to pop bubbles with their little hands?
No.
It's precious.
My wife follows some people that do rehab for animals like raccoons, foxes, and stuff, and it's adorable to watch. And seeing the little sounds and things they make is like, oh, this is adorable.
I'm just saying they're really cute. And if it was domesticated, it wouldn't be going through my trash.
This is true. You don't know what, maybe.
That's true.
It could be an
That's
instinct.
True. I mean, I do have 2 cats that also go through my trash. So
I love that little side tangent we had. That was amazing.
That was nice.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
This is the way that, that's the way this podcast goes at times. We just go sideways. So throughout your life, we've met so many different people and we've dealt with so many different varieties of experiences. Who are some significant influences in your life?
That's a really good question because I've had the chance to meet a lot of influential people. I think the number one influence for me is definitely my granddad. He has been a constant friend and companion, and I really learned a love of learning from him, right? Always asking questions and always being able to grow. I mean, he's over 90 years old at this point.
So he's seen a lot in life.
Yeah, I mean, ups and downs. And we talk about a lot, in our generation, how we've seen so many ups and downs in the world. Imagine how many he's seen, right?
Oh, yeah.
And to have somebody who is like me, right? And comes with a lot of new ideas and a lot of changes, right? And to see how he can adapt and still love me for me, right? And ask those very influential questions. So my granddad is really my number one influence when I think of things, right?
Shout out to Grandpa if you hear it.
Yep. There you go. Marvin. He hates his name. So, yeah. But definitely my granddad, when I think of lifelong influence, when it comes to really where I'm at in life right now, there's somebody who I work with named Trell. And Trell is
cool.
Great.
It's a neat name.
Trellini. Yeah, it's her whole name. But
that's amazing.
Call her Trell. And she's just a really great mentor. And we don't talk as often as we could, but she definitely taught me how to love people where they're at, right? And gave me a lot of insights because I work with a lot of diverse people. And having been born and raised in Georgia, that doesn't give me the broadest perspective sometimes, right?
It's true.
So I have to open up my mind. So being able to have a mentor who kind of just showed me you can love people where they're at and you can grow, right?
And that's something we definitely need more in our lives.
Yeah.
We need those people.
Yep.
So if you're out there, people, we love you. Thank you.
Yes.
Made all the difference.
So those are the 2 that came to my mind for sure.
A lot of the topic today is going to go back to your early part of your job. Because if now you train the trainers that train people, I kind of want to go back to what it was like kind of being a stewardess or flight attendant. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Got my names wrong here. Flight attendant.
You can't gender the job anymore.
I'm sorry, you're right.
Shame.
I am shamed on that one. But I wanted to start out with kind of going to that world because that's something that's so interesting to me as well. And I think that we can learn a lot from that. Because I have a lot of teachers and that have come on the podcast and come in the future and say, hey, how did you get to this point? It's kind of a neat point. So I'm going to have some stereotypical questions to start with before I kind of lead down the line.
Yeah, go for
into
it.
the more serious questions.
Yes, the nitty gritty.
So I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 specifically that I was going to ask here. What are some perks that you receive from working for an airline?
Free travel, right? If there's an open seat on a plane, me and my family, we can hop on it. Right?
So you have to, so it's like standby kind of in a way?
It's standby. So, and then it goes in seniority order. So if you talk to anybody who works for an airline, seniority matters, right? So when you got hired really drives everything that we do. Pay, what you can hold when you fly, because we bid. Imagine playing kind of poker, gambling for your schedule, right? So the higher you are in seniority, the better trips that you can hold. The same thing with seats on a plane, right? So since my hire date at this point is about 10 years in, I am able to get on most flights. And so are my parents, and so is my brother. So whenever we want to go somewhere, if there's an open seat, we can go.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And if there isn't, do you, if you want a discount on a flight, do you get discounts for if there's not a seat, but at the end of the day, you can, if you want to buy for, say, like a different airline or something, do you get a discount that way?
So we get flow back agreements. So we get to fly on other airlines, or like we can pay less for a ticket, but most of us just get kind of creative, right? So if you're trying to go to, let's say, Punta Cana, right? And there might be a flight from Atlanta to Punta Cana, but it's completely full. So what you do is you get creative. So you look at, is there a flight Atlanta to Miami? And then there is a flight from Miami to Punta Cana. So it's kind of like non-rev Russian roulette, right? So you're walking around and you're like,
yourself.
This is good. There we go. So we get more creative with how we go rather than paying for tickets.
And that's definitely you learn as you're going on the little system,
Yes.
how to make that work.
I always say, always look at Raleigh-Durham, because people forget that it's a major airline, but you can almost
Wow.
always go to Raleigh and like connect to somewhere else.
Sweet.
Get creative. Yes.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Now, how many countries have you visited? Saying that, you get to go to all these different places.
Yeah. Oh, I've never counted.
Give us an odd random number.
A lot.
I like that answer. A lot.
Yeah. I've been to all 50 states, including Delaware, which is one of those weird ones, right?
Yeah.
Because nobody ever goes to Delaware. But I've been to Delaware. But I've had the opportunity, to go to the UK. I've gone over to London and Ireland. London and Dublin. I don't want to know why I said London and Ireland. That was weird.
City, and
Yeah.
you said UK, so it kind of like,
Yeah. There are quite a few times I've gotten to go to Nigeria, and one of my really good friends is Nigerian. So his
sweet.
family's in Lagos, so I've got to visit there. I have flown into Sydney, Australia, but I got food poisoning on the flight over.
That sucks.
So I spent the entire layover in my hotel room, just not having a great time. So yeah, I've seen Sydney from the inside of a hotel room. So,
But you were there. It
yeah,
counts. You were there.
And I got to fly into Moscow when we were still flying over there. So
Wow.
that was quite cool. Which obviously we might not get a chance to do
Not
that
for a while.
anymore. So
Who knows?
that was a cool time.
We'll see what happens in this world.
Very true.
It's always interesting times. We go from one thing to the next thing, and
Yeah.
I feel like we're escalating pretty quickly.
I just think it's cool that I have a visa written in Russian, like with
What?
my name and everything on it. So
I bet do you get to stamp your passport whenever you go into a country?
So it depends, because sometimes when you're crew, they don't stamp you. They just let you go through certain different customs lines. So some countries do and some countries don't. And sometimes they'll stamp you and sometimes they won't. It all depends.
If it was me, I'd be like, I want my proof I was here. Stamp it.
I've tried to do that sometimes, but sometimes the people who you're working with are so ready to go.
Oh, yeah.
And so you don't want to be that person being like, please stamp my passport, right? When the rest of the crew's like, Rose, we have to
We're over this. Let's go.
move
Next flight.
on. Yeah.
What's the longest flight you've ever been on?
Longest flight, I feel like to Lagos, because that's a long flight. I'm not going to lie. You get so tired on those.
I've been on a 10-hour flight and I was about to go crazy.
Yeah. Where was that to?
It was to Iceland. No, it was 7 hours. It was to Dublin.
Okay.
We flew from North Carolina into Dublin. I think that was like 9-10 hours.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's a lot. I feel like Lagos is.
I'm probably wrong. It was like 7, but it felt like it was 10.
Yeah. Well, when you're on there and like, if you're sitting in a middle seat or in the back, like that time stretches.
It does. And I sat next to like 3 different people at times. I started out with, with this 2-person seat. And then people started like switching out, family members. And every time I woke up, I'm like, okay.
Am I moving?
Okay. Like what's happening here?
That's funny. Yeah. But yeah, probably to Lagos, because I feel like that's 11-ish hours, like actually on the plane. But we get to take naps.
Oh, that's
So
good.
yeah, it works out.
Don't worry, so quiet. Yeah, I can turn on the lights. Okay, everybody go to sleep. So I can go to sleep too.
Yes, exactly. We still have people like on the plane.
What's your favorite city you've been to? International or local or
I was about to say, I'm definitely going to say Milan. Like
Ooh.
Milan was just a really great time. And I think a lot of it was because of the people who I was with. So
that makes a big difference.
yeah, the crew who I was there with was able to go out and really have a good time. And we ate so much food. And I just really love that kind of European style of dining, having your wine and having that
Different
kind of
courses.
Yeah, it's just so much more of an experience than
I can believe that.
feel like we have over here sometimes, where they're just like, here's your whole meal. There you go. Bye.
Yeah. Like, we had on Thanksgiving this past year in Iceland, in Reykjavik, we had a 5-course meal. And it was just, and I was just like, wait, 5-course courses, like,
Yeah.
with all the different foods. And I was like, this is great.
But it's so nice because you get to actually taste those different.
Yes, you cleanse your palate
flavors.
out, and then they
Yeah.
match it with each time you're coming through with a wine or something.
Mm-hmm.
It really is an experience.
It's an experience, right? Instead of just eating, right?
Yep.
Which is, we have to do it.
I have the problem of I just swallow food. I'm just like, whoa, 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 and put it in. And my brother makes a comment of, if it wasn't for the necessity of like having to eat, you probably wouldn't. Like, it's just like, yeah, I've gotten better about it over the years.
I mean, honestly, as somebody who has a family member who can't swallow, because I don't think I've told you this.
No, I haven't.
So my dad can't swallow. So he's peg fed.
Interesting.
So he is a bionic man, if you think about it. Anyway, that's a side one. But yeah.
Now, I'm sure you get asked this one a lot, but I'm going to twist it a little bit. Have you ever busted anybody trying to join the Mile High Club?
Yes, I have. I sure have. And I felt kind of bad about it because I totally support. I was like, you do you. But also, there's kids on this plane.
That's true.
We can't have this going on. Yeah, people do a lot of everything people do on the ground, they do in the air.
I can believe it.
Yeah. So sometimes you want to be like, oh, this is not the place for that, my friend. People can see your screen. Like, calm down,
Yeah, I can believe it.
But there was a couple who went in one of the smallest lavatories.
Yeah, I never understand that. It's small. Like, what are you doing?
So tiny. And I just remember the door kept almost opening, right? And so we had to knock on the door, and I was like, hey, y'all, you can't do this. And they're like, oh, we're just helping each other out. And I'm like, I'm sure
you are helping each other out.
I'm sure you are. And I'm proud of you for doing it, but not right now. So I have busted somebody. But, I support people trying to get their kicks in.
Yeah, man, rock and roll.
Yeah, just maybe don't do it on my flight. Or on anybody's flight, actually. Nobody needs to see that. Behave like a...
be a person.
Yeah.
People can be jerks.
And think about
That's
other
true.
people,
That's
around
true.
you.
Maybe if you're on like a 10-person flight and no one's there, like, go for it.
If you can afford a private jet, go on the private jet.
They now actually have flights that you can actually go up and join the Mile High Club, like on your own private little plane. They fly you up for like an hour or something like that, and then they fly you back down. It's a thing now. Yeah, it's a thing.
I feel like I would just get an economy ticket and bring a big blanket. No, I wouldn't. Actually, don't put that out there in the world. You can.
Can I go? Okay,
yeah.
I'll leave it in there.
Yeah. But
enjoy the extra content. That's the bonus content, everybody. Congratulations.
Yeah, but all my coworkers will be like, no, don't do that. And I'll be like, yeah.
So that was my fun little random question. I'm sure I'll throw one randomly back in there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of misconceptions with any job you go into. What are some misconceptions people have about you being flight attendants? And what are your response to these?
Yeah. So when I read this question, the first thing that popped into my head is a lot of people think that flight attendants are dating somebody in every city, right? Or kind of easy, I guess you could say, right? And so a lot of people do think that flight attendants are a little bit more promiscuous, but that's totally not the case anymore, right? That could have come from that kind of former lifestyle that they used to have when they were traveling all the time. But nowadays, most flight attendants who I know are parents. They have whole families, right? And we don't really fly with the same people. So it's not really like the flight attendant pilot kind of trope going on either. So really, they're just people doing a job that happens to fit their lifestyle. So the biggest misconception is that we're dating somebody in every city. No, we're so sick of people by the end of some flights,
I can believe that. That's something down the line I'm actually going to ask about, because that's just, as like a teacher, I'm like, I always like to see disciplinary stuff for people.
Yeah.
Now, what is your educational background? How did you go from one thing to another thing?
Yeah, that's a good question too. So I went to KSU and I studied early childhood education.
Falling into the trap that your parents had?
Yes, yeah. Having two parents who both were teachers, it was kind of like part of my agreement. I was going to go to school and I didn't know what to do. So I was like, I'll try to become a teacher. And I did student teaching with a second grade class for a hot second, and it was not for me, right? It just was a lot going on. And so I started flying for an airline when I was 21. And so I've been doing it ever since. And I started off with a regional carrier. So you know how when you buy a ticket that might say like a major airline's name and you get on a really tiny plane and you're like, this doesn't feel like the big airline. It's not. It's usually like somebody that they contract out with. So I flew with them for a little while. And then I got on with the airline that I'm with now. And it just kind of progressed, right? I'm pretty good at presenting in front of large groups of people. I guess I just
You've always been that way. It's your drama background.
Oh, yeah, I have no shame. So there's that.
We all have those little moments where like, yeah, you know what? At the end of the day, let your freak flag fly.
Exactly. So it just kind of like lined up. And then I've been training for quite a while. And then I got this new position where I am now training the trainers. So it's just kind of happened naturally. Things that I applied for, I just got it. I'm just lucky.
You've got good leadership skills, though. You've got people personality, and it's people pick up on that very quickly.
Well, thank you. I try to.
You do well.
Thanks.
You've always done that way since I've known you. Always have. Now, how does one person go through training to become a flight attendant?
Oh, it's actually pretty intensive, right? Because especially right now, and I'm going to kind of use this as like a plug. Right now, hiring is hard, right? So hiring for any industry. If you think about it, there are worker shortages and people are going out and they're expanding they might be going back to school, XYZ, different reasons. But we're trying to come back from a pandemic and grow faster than we have in years, right? So we're hiring over 4,000 people this year.
Holy moly.
And so we can't just say, I have a flight that needs to go out tomorrow and put somebody on a plane, right? They have to go through 6 weeks of training. And so for that, flight attendants are the one person who never wants to do the job they're actually paid for. Does that make sense?
No, it totally does make sense.
Yeah. And so we have to train them on medical. We have to train them on emergency management. We have to train them on every single different type of plane that we might have. So that takes a pretty extensive amount of training that can be really stressful. And so if you wanted to do that, you would have to apply, go through a pretty rigorous selection process that involves background checks because government mandated job.
You got to be able to take care of the people on the plane. You don't want a crazy person up in the skies.
Exactly. So it just kind of takes a while, but totally worth it in the end, in my opinion.
Well, I could believe it. It's something I actually thought about at one point doing, but then I was like, no, I moved on and just continued my education process.
But you'd be such a fun flight attendant.
I probably would.
Yeah.
And, it'd be fun, but I think my kids would be sad, the future children that I've now taught and will be teaching in the future that they'll miss out on.
I was about to say, I think that you're doing good things where you're at.
But
if you ever change your mind, let me know.
It's a good thought process. I'm pretty sure my wife would be like, go for it, do your thing, and come back.
Yeah.
Just make sure you know where your home is. So
it's here.
It's right here.
Yes.
Exactly.
And you'd miss your cats.
I would miss my cats. I love my 2 cats. I'm a cat dad.
Yeah.
I love my cats.
I mean, I miss my girls when I go, That's a question that I'm always curious about. That's as we get later in that I'm going to ask about. How has it changed over the years? Because you went, we had the pandemic that just went through, and what's been some big changes you've seen? I think, not to get too
heated politically.
Politically, because that's one thing that I'm definitely going to say. I think that in our country, a lot of politics have happened around certain things. And unfortunately, I mean, this being a teacher, right?
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes those big arguments end up affecting the day-to-day workers, right? And so that kind of divide within work groups has been really difficult because we have people coming from every background and all working on the same plane. So within the flight attendant work group, that can be hard because maybe you're working with somebody who is so polarized from you.
Oh, yeah.
That having those different opinions. And then you have the passengers as well, right?
Oh, gosh, seeing so many videos and stuff of horror stories.
It's just, I've heard many times before people check their brain when they check their bags, right? So by the time they get on the plane, it's stressful. Flying is stressful, especially if you don't do it a lot. But I think that people forget that flight attendants are people, right? And it might be their 4th or 5th flight, right? We might have thought we were ending up in one city or going home, and we're ending up in another city, or we're working a 15-hour day.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Whew.
It's hard. And so then you have people who are maybe asking for things. And I literally had a medical event on board an aircraft.
Oh my word.
And then I walk away from that medical event and somebody's asking me for a Diet Coke. And
this is more important. Wait.
And my face is literally just this blank slate because I'm like, right now? You want a Diet Coke right now? But in my head, I had to remind myself they don't know what's happening up there. But also, the snarkiness in me wants to be like, not right now. Sit down. What's wrong with you?
The seat light's on. Yes. Why are you not buckled?
Get down. Get down right now. But
the lights are down. It's supposed to be dark time. Sleep.
Yeah. I just think that it's so crazy to me how like things can happen on the plane and like part of the plane will know it's happening and the other part of the plane has no idea it's happening.
Because it's long.
Yeah.
Like, the thing is crazy.
And so by the time you get back to the back and people are asking you things, I'm like, no, like I don't want to do that. And so I just go lock myself in the lavatory for a minute and then I come back out and I'm a human.
Smart. You got to regroup.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
You got to regroup. That's a very important thing.
Yep.
Now you're on the other side of you're training the trainers that are doing the flight attendants. I'm a long jargon there. How does it feel to be on the other side, having gone through this?
Yeah, I think
This is jumping ahead, but whatever. We'll roll with it.
it's all good. You tell me. We can.
Yeah, we'll map around.
I think that, I mean, the good thing is that who I work for, I still get to fly. Not as often as I would like, especially right now, considering we're like, doing so much. We're very busy, but I still get to fly. So I still get to experience a lot of the things that, the people who I'm training get to experience. And so I think it's really rewarding to be able to say, I understand what you're going through, right? I'm not just a trainer who's training people who has no idea what they're talking about. And I feel like we've all had some sort of leader in our life that they're trying to train you or teach you something. And you're like,
oh my gosh,
you don't know what you're saying.
I feel bad for calling out on this one, but this happens a lot in the teaching world.
Yeah.
Like you haven't been in the classroom for 20 years or you're writing legislation for something you've never, ever been a part of.
Yeah. And like, you want to be there and be like, you need to ask my feedback. I understand like what it is, but so I understand what the flight attendants are going through and I try to stay really plugged in. So it just feels really nice, to not be the person who's up there just saying, do as I say, not as I do. I can actually say,
yes.
Do as I do, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, that does go a long way and they can relate better. And I'm sure they're better students as a result of that.
Yeah.
And that's a good model that's set up by the airline.
Yeah.
I like that.
I like it too. And not every airline does it that way. So
that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
I think that it just makes you have better flight attendants in the end, right?
I agree.
Because it's a job that nobody will understand unless they've done it.
That's this is a great episode to hear that because it's peeking behind the door.
Yes.
Peeking behind the door.
Yeah.
Now, what is a work schedule like for you in like a day or a week? Because as you said at one point, you're like, oh yeah, I did a 15 flight day, or I was supposed to be in Chicago, but I wound up in, Birmingham.
So that's the great thing about flight attendant schedules. You can almost find something that works for everyone in some way. So we get our schedules a month ahead of time, and then we can kind of swap and drop. So it's a lot like poker, right?
Yeah.
I want this, I can trade, I can do this. And it's all based off your seniority date, right? But a typical day, it really depends on what you want to do, because some people want to do international, and that's what they want to do, right? So their day might be, I go from Atlanta to London. I have 24 hours in London. I come back from London the next day, right? So they might be gone for 3 days, but they get 24 hours of rest in London.
Yeah, because that's a long flight.
Yes. So they could do that. There are some people who, especially out of Atlanta, they say they don't want to go past the Mississippi. They like up and down. So they like going Atlanta to Birmingham, Atlanta, Raleigh, like just really short flights. That's what they like doing. For me, boarding is the worst time of a flight. So I'd rather not do that up and down, right? Because that means that you're having to do more flights in a shorter period of time. So you might do 4 in one day.
Oh, wow.
Right? So kind of like imagining most days are going to be, they can range from, it just can be whatever you want it to be, right?
Build your own way through.
Yeah, they build flight schedules and then they put out, this is what we're going to need people to work. And then you put in your preferences. Like, I like to fly short flights. I like to fly longer flights. And if you have the seniority or the tenure, you can hold those things.
Is there like a website that you can be able to like trade this stuff through?
Yes.
And see it? So that's smart.
So we've got a whole swaps, drops.
Do you like bargain and say, hey man, I'll give you like $50 to take this one, or
We are not allowed to add reasons, quote unquote. That's what they call them, reasons, to pick things up, our swap and drop. Yeah. Because it's all about like bidding honesty and everything. But I've seen some people post some incentive before.
At the end of the day, there's always those backdoor deals.
Exactly.
It always works.
Yep. You just got to be careful.
Now I jump around a lot. This is fun. I enjoy this. It's my podcast. I can do what I want.
Yes.
How do you deal with the discipline issues on a plane? Like that's something, being a teacher, I always look for other advices of what do you do?
Everybody handles things differently. I think I'm just very big on being clear with people, very specific, right? I like knowing the why behind the what of things. So whenever anybody's kind of behaving outside of the norm, I just am very clear with them. Hey, just so you know, if you keep behaving in this way, XYZ might happen. How do you feel about that? And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, oh, authorities might meet the flight. How do you feel about that? And then in their head, you see those kind of wheels
turning
going off,
yeah.
right? And being like, oh, maybe I should reassess the way I'm behaving, right?
Because no one wants to be on a no-flight list, or no one wants to be kicked off a flight somewhere.
Yeah, and we don't want to kick anybody off of a flight. Like, whenever that happens, we travel, so we understand how terrible that is. I mean, that's truly affecting somebody's day. So that's never what anybody wants to happen on any side of anything, right? So I think the biggest thing is that being clear with people that if the behavior continues, this will be the kind of outcome. But yeah, so that's how I handle things. And
know the line.
Yes, this is exactly where we're at. So, and then if they choose to keep behaving in that way, they know the consequences.
That's a great way to do that.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm gonna have to write down a note of that one just to remind in my classrooms. I got one yesterday from Miss Mullins about, kids like to get up and try to shoot their trash in the trash can. They gotta give me 5 push-ups.
Oh.
So I'm like,
5 push-ups. That sounds like my dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure he had something similar to that.
Yeah. My dad used to teach welding at our high school.
Yep.
So he would be like, oh, you said a curse word? Drop down and give me 10. And I'm like, Dad, you're not in the Marines anymore. You can't do that.
But it works the consequence.
Yes.
At the end of the day. And it's
Yeah.
not like you're not forcing them to do it, and you're just allowing to say, hey, let's do this. It's classroom morale here. I'll even do it with you on this because it looks bad on me that you let this kind of happen.
Yeah. I just think we can definitely benefit from letting people know the outcome of things in general, right? Like even when it comes to like interpersonal conversations, just saying, hey, if this continues, this might be the outcome. We could be a little bit better about being clear with our communication.
I think that's true. That's very true statements.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Trying to get better at that. I'm working on it. Yeah.
We're always learning. We're always trying to build progression. That's just kind of part of it. Mm-hmm. Now you go through the whole spiel whenever you get in. These are your exits. Like the person in front of you, blah, 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 blah. Pull up inflate your tube thing. What is it? The raft thing. The life vest. I haven't flown in a while. I'm flying on Friday and I'm like,
where are you going?
Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
Chris and I are going to Chicago to go watch New Japan in AEW's Forbidden Door. For those wrestling fans out there, hopefully in the near future, there'll be a wrestling episode that we'll discuss in detail as like a roundtable discussion. So preview there.
Cool. Yes.
Yeah, awesome. We're going for 4 days. We're excited about it.
Yeah, you told me about that.
Yeah,
I remember.
We're excited about that one.
Yeah.
Like, so you're going through all this stuff. What do you, with the pre-flight, what's stuff that's like kind of not covered that you have to be like prepared for? You mentioned like, okay, I have to do CPR training. I have to do stuff. What are some other things that you have to be prepared for that you're like, I'm not going to necessarily tell you in the pre-flight thing, but I got you to make you safe?
Yeah, I think people, it's so funny, and this is just kind of a side story. I remember I was doing that demo one time, and this person looks up at me, and they respond to me, and they're like, oh, I never pay attention to this demo because it doesn't matter anyway. If the pilot says it, I'll listen. And I remember just in my head, and this was one of the times my snarky attitude really paid off, because I looked at them and I said, hey, just so you know, if you have a heart attack, they're not coming out of the flight deck. If somebody tries to take over this plane, they're not coming out of the flight deck, right? It's me and you, my friend, right? Me and you. So having this moment where somebody was like, oh, it doesn't matter what you're doing. Definitely medical incidents, right? So we're trained on how to deal with that because at 25,000 feet, your body reacts a lot differently than it does on the ground. So we're trained for that, and mainly just emergency situations. So Miracle on the Hudson, right? So when Sully landed, that was the first successful ditching or water landing that ever happened by a U.S. airline. And so we learn, how do we prepare this aircraft? How do we open the door? What's going to come out of that door, right? It might be a slide or a slide raft. Is it something that we can detach and we can have people float on because we might need to?
True.
We also learn about, all of our emergency equipment. How do I actually utilize this? And we have medications on board the aircraft for emergency situations.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so we learn all these different things, but mainly it's the doors because
those things are heavy, and those things are, oh my gosh, I can only imagine when just any force of wind is just going to be like, oh man.
Yeah, and just imagine that coming out of each of those doors is like a giant inflatable thing.
Like a tongue.
Yeah, it just sticks right out, right?
Yeah.
And so we have to know what's coming out of that and how to open the door and how to arm and disarm it. And arm and disarm is really just, if I open the door, is a slide going to come out? Or is it disarmed? If I open the door, is it just going to open so maybe people can go on and off the plane?
Gotcha.
Yeah, without blowing a slide.
Cool.
Yeah. So we learned that for every aircraft we have. And we've got a lot of planes.
Yeah, holy moly. Especially in Atlanta. I think we're number 2 again for the largest airport in the world. Isn't it somewhere in China that's like number 1 now?
I think so.
They made like a giant starfish, like it looks like a starfish with how like big it is and how it's set up. Because they were like the second, and then they're like, we're going to be bigger now.
That's cool.
I think it was like 2 years ago.
We lost?
Yeah, I think we're no longer the biggest.
That's probably a good thing.
In the United States, we're the biggest.
I mean, but when you go to Atlanta, it feels like it's the biggest.
Yeah, getting around there is insane.
Yes.
You get your exercise in.
You sure do.
That's true.
Yep.
That is very true.
Yeah.
Now, what's your biggest pet peeve in the skies whenever you're up there?
You don't have to tell me why you need water. You can just ask for water and I'll give you water. But my biggest pet peeve is when people say, "Can I have water because I need to take a pill?"
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Here, have some water. Like, I want you to be hydrated. I might not get it to you right now because I might be doing something else. Yet again, that reminder that other things might be going on.
The cart is like not here with me right now. I got to go get that.
I will go get it. I might be doing XYZ, and please remind me if I forget, because yet again, 200 people on this plane. I might forget for a second. But when people say, "Oh, I just need this to take a pill," and every single time in my head, I'm like, "Oh, you read this." There was an article that went out a few years ago that said flight attendants must give you water if you need it for a medical reason. We're going to give you water anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So don't tell me. And some people tell me all the medicines they're taking, and I'm like, I don't need to know that.
Oh, my word.
That is
That is a personal information that you don't need to share with me.
Exactly. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, I take that one too. I take that one too. Good to know. Good to know. We can be friends.
We can be friends. And I know if something happens that, okay, cool. That's a reactionary rate. That's something that's there.
So I'm gathering information.
You're like a spy.
I am a spy.
You are a spy. You know probably way too much about people. That's
people
probably
share.
Yeah, a lot. I know sitting on flights, that's where if you're on a long flight, sit next to somebody, like you never know what kind of conversation you're gonna meet up
I'm gonna
with.
tangent real fast.
Go for
Another
it. Love
pet
it.
peeve is that some newspaper or article or magazine, they publish that if you sit down for a whole flight, you'll get blood clots. That is only if you travel a lot and if you're
That
up
was
in
a question I was about to ask. That's
it?
awesome.
Is it?
Louis,
Okay.
the next one.
Oh, okay. I told you I just looked at it.
No, I know you did. I love it. As I'm saying, it's so cool. Like we're transitioning so nicely. We're on the same wavelength.
Yes.
Ah!
So, like, they publish it, and that'll only happen if you're traveling a lot, often, and if you're up in the air for a significant period of time. So, if you're going Atlanta to Miami, you don't need to be back in the back galley doing squats, right? You don't need to do that. You can sit down Atlanta to Miami. You're going to be just fine, right? Because you must also imagine I would not go into your office and start doing squats, right? And so here I am trying to eat my lunch, and I got somebody's butt in my face. It's just not what I'm going
Y'all
for.
don't have great seats. You have like the weird little bucket seats that like fold out, and it's just like, that looks not comfortable at all.
And they're normally right by a bathroom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the
Anyway.
smells.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't really have the fans on those things either to kind of like empty it out. And some people just don't properly flush either.
That's true. Yeah.
that's-
A lot of people come on planes to use the bathroom, and I'm like, what were you doing the 4 hours before you got on the plane?
I don't know why you would want to use the bathroom on a plane.
No, just like when you go to the Renaissance Festival or something, you go to a gas station before you get there so you don't have to use the porta potties.
Yep.
I'm just saying.
Oh, no, it's true.
Pre-planning.
Do you have to deal with any of those as flight attendants, those medical stuff that you have to constantly be aware of?
I think the biggest thing is really intoxication on flights. Like, that is a big one. And that
You mean like drinking alcohol or? Okay.
Yeah. Well, and more, being under the influence of other drugs
Yes.
as well. So that's definitely becoming more common, especially depending on where you fly out of, right?
Okay.
Because we have flights that go out of like different states that maybe have different policies around different, drugs and everything. But intoxication, people get nervous when they're flying, and then they come on the plane and they've had like 5 shots and 2 beers, and you're like, ooh. What people don't realize is that when you get up into the air, right, those drinks that you had on the ground and you might be able to handle it, they can multiply when you get up into the air.
Yeah.
So a person who, and we're actually not allowed to bring a person who appears to be intoxicated on the plane. Like the FAA is very
That's
specific.
smart. I love that.
Yeah, but the problem is that sometimes we don't see it during boarding,
Yeah, 'cause
right?
some people are just very quiet. And some people are just, they may look exhausted because they may be on 4 flights, but really, they could be intoxicated.
Exactly. And so we get up into the air, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's 4C. 4C is naked. Oh, Lord, go put her clothes on, right? So I've only had that happen once, and that was crazy.
That's all it takes is once. It's memorable.
Just once, and it got stuck in my mind, and I was like, oh, she's having a good time, but we can't do that right now. So.
That's awesome.
But mainly just the biggest medical issue that comes from that is when people kind of over-medicate themselves, and then they get themselves into kind of this like comatose kind of state going on. And it's really scary from our perspective, because first and foremost, do you need CPR? Are you completely unresponsive? What's going on? You're barely breathing, right? Because people drink a lot, and maybe they'll take some sort of calm down drugs, right? Yeah. Or like a muscle relaxer. And I've had that happen multiple times where I'm not sure if the person is alive.
Oh my word.
It's just kind of a scary moment. And luckily now I've had it happen quite a few times. So slapping ice on the neck, right? Doing the whole shebang, trying to get their body back to regulate. But it's terrifying when you're in the middle of a flight.
Oh, yeah.
And somebody's not responsive. So that's the biggest medical issue that I feel like we run into in my experience. But
do you have to go to the doctor every so often and get like checkups for blood clots or anything because the cabin pressures are going and things like that for you?
So I don't. Still on the younger side of most flight attendants for me, right? So we have people who have been flying 50 years, which is just nuts, right? Because
yeah, holy moly.
Like 33, I'm 33, to have somebody who's been flying almost 20 years longer than I've been alive, right? And so I don't need to, and my primary care physician doesn't see anything wrong with my body. But I know that certain people do need to go. They might need to be like on different sort of medications. But yeah, I'd be interested to know if anybody's studying long-term effects on flight attendants.
So any medical field that's out there, if you want to send us a study, that's cool. I'll give a plug at the end of an email address that you can send for. It'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, let us know.
See where it goes. There's a lot of information out there.
Yeah.
But nutritional values. Like you're on planes, that's, plane food is not the greatest at all. Do you pack your lunch? How do you keep up so you're healthy to be able to do these flights, especially if you're doing a 14-hour shift?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. I am not as good as some flight attendants are. I've got friends who pack their lunchbox and they will have salads. They'll freeze things so that sometimes we'll be gone for 3 to 4 days, right? And so they'll freeze things, and that's what keeps the rest of their food cold for the rest of the time they're traveling. I'm pretty good at packing things that I can eat in my room. So I almost always know there's going to be a coffee maker. So I tend to bring noodles or pho, different things that I can make with hot water, because I might not have access to a microwave.
Sure.
So, and then on every plane, there's always hot water as well. So tend to do things like that. But I am not as good as I should be when I travel.
It's hard.
But I also like eating, and I really love restaurants, and I like to go and try different beers in different cities.
Ooh.
So for a while, I had an app where I was tracking different beers that I had tried around the United
genius.
States. Yeah. So
do you have any suggestions?
In Anchorage, Alaska, there's the 49th State Brewing, and they have a lovely beer. It's just so good, right? It ranges all the way from an IPA to a stout. Oh. And so it gives you a whole little range. And that's the one that just popped into my head.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you get the full range here, just little bits along. Because usually a flight's 4 or 5 kind of deal.
But this one I just remember in my head, but also Anchorage is just gorgeous in general.
I haven't made it up to Alaska.
Yeah.
I think I've hit 40 states. I haven't hit the West Coast yet.
Yeah.
So I can imagine.
It's so nice and way fewer mosquitoes.
I can believe that, but zero humidity, but it's 115, so it's you gotta constantly be drinking.
Yes, because you don't even realize.
Water.
Yeah.
It's specific
Not
here.
alcohol.
We were just talking about that. I was
We're just going there.
Yeah.
Definitely don't.
That dehydrates you more.
Don't fly out to the West Coast drinking. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Simple as that. Now, do you get a stipend for food or hotels whenever you're flying to those locations?
Yeah.
How does that work out?
So the company actually pays for our rooms. So when we lay over in a city, we get our layover hotel. And so we typically go as a crew. There's usually a bus there waiting to pick us up. And then we travel together and we go to the hotel as a crew. And that's where we stay. So that's provided by the company.
Do you get like a decent places or is this like Motel 6s kind of deal?
No, definitely not Motel 6s.
Yeah, you never know.
I mean, like some nice places. I mean, I've gotten bougie when I travel.
What?
Cade, it makes me terrible because like I used to be a La Quinta person. It didn't bother me.
Yeah, same here. It doesn't bother me when I travel.
But
a lot of people get
now-
angry with me. They're like, dude, we're staying. I feel like I'm going to get shot here. I'm like, no, we're fine. Just lock the door and put the dresser in front of it.
We'll be good. We'll be good.
We're good.
Yeah. Move the chair in front of it. And don't ever be on the first floor.
Oh, yeah. You want to be second, third. Oh, yeah.
Second or third. That way people can't like creep in. Not that people would do that, but they might.
It happens at those hotels.
But I've gotten really spoiled because, you know, you stay at the nicer hotels like Marriott's, Hilton's, you know, Hyatt's and things like that. So you get kind of used to it. And you're like, oh, this is nice. And so now when I travel on my own, I have to remind myself that I get paid well, but I don't get paid that well. So.
Do y'all get like the cheat hacks of like, I can get rewards points for this or the things I can be able to rack up to use whenever I want to take a vacation or something?
Yeah. So most hotels will allow us to kind of collect the points. Some of them
Nice.
won't. It depends. So I've been really lucky to get some like status with some of those hotels and everything.
Like platinum, gold, you know?
Oh, definitely
deal?
not that high. Yeah. But still, you know, enough to be like, ooh, I'm a, you know, Bonvoy member or whatever. I think that's Marriott.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, I'm not
sure.
cool enough.
But so we get a nice hotel and then we get what we call per diem. So per diem's like really flight attendants only get paid when they're working on the plane.
Yeah, I know
right?
that they don't get paid whenever they're doing the announcements and boarding process.
We do now. So
Hey, that's a win.
yes. All right. So that's all I'm going to say there because then people can figure out who I'm talking about. No, they'll figure out the airline.
Oh, no. I heard a knock on something and I thought
think
it was their chair. Sorry.
yeah.
I thought someone was banging at my door.
It's like,
Yeah, sorry.
but yeah, so we get paid when we're working on the plane. So that really is when we make our big money. But the rest of the time, whenever we're out of our base, right? So my base is Atlanta. So whenever I'm outside of my base, I'm getting per diem. So that might be like a few dollars an hour. And so all that is adding up. And that's what we use to pay for our meals and things like that.
Nice.
Yeah.
So that's cool. That's a nice little perk there.
Yeah.
Especially whenever you're not at your home base area.
Yeah. Especially
sure.
if you do internationally because you get paid more.
Now, is it given to you like a credit card or do you give them like cash or something? Does it go into your pay? Because you're like, oh, here's a debit card to this and you can't get the cash out of it, you know, because some people are like, I'm going to pack my own food and save that money for other things.
It just goes into our paycheck.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So it just goes into our money. So the amount of time that you're away, it just kind of all adds up. So it's just additional money. Yeah.
Sweet. That's a win.
Yeah.
Now, are you assigned to like the same crew for periods of time or just like random assignments? Because you said you can kind of pick and choose your flight range.
Yeah. So when they build the trips, most of them are around 3 days. 3 days tends to be, I would say, the average, you know? So a 3-day trip might be an international trip where we have that longer layover, or it might be, you know, 3 flights and you end up in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, right?
Okay.
And then you stay in Jackson Hole for like 16 hours and the next day you work Jackson Hole to Salt Lake City, right? And then you stay in Salt Lake for like maybe 15 hours. And then you fly Salt Lake back to Atlanta. So they build it based off of operational need.
So you don't get to pick your crew really. You're like, you may be not working with the same person for like weeks on end, months on end.
Yeah. So typically for that 3-day trip, you'll be with the same people. Or like whenever you kind of sign in, you're with that group and you stay with them until like you get back to your home base. But then we also imagine it like substitute teachers, right?
Okay.
So sometimes a teacher calls in sick, right? And the good thing about subs is that they can show up. They typically live in the area. They're right there. They might be like 30 minutes late, depending.
But you know, especially if they picked it up last minute.
Yeah. The difference with flight attendants is if I get sick in, let's say Raleigh, right? Raleigh, Durham. We might not have a flight attendant there in Raleigh, Durham to be able.
Oh, so you're having to fly someone in?
Yes. Yeah. So
That's
sometimes
crazy.
flights get delayed because we can't go out with less flight attendants.
Yeah, I've
than
seen
we
that
need.
with flight attendants and with pilots.
Yeah. So you have to imagine like we don't have a flight attendant sitting in every airport, you know, all day.
You don't have a camp out like at hospitals where they have like the beds just stacked up and
No. We do have people in the major like bases that sit on what we call like airport standby. So
Okay.
like in Atlanta, we'll have like people on call ready to go. But yet again, if I get sick in Raleigh, we still have to fly somebody from Atlanta to Raleigh.
That's a smaller airport.
Yeah, and we're not just making a flight, so it's going to be the next scheduled flight, right? And then that flight from Raleigh can come back to Atlanta. So it's a little bit more complicated. So when it's things like that, I might fly with 4 different crews in a day. Right?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
You meet a lot of people.
Oh my goodness,
that's a cool
meet
thing.
So many people.
If you're an introvert, this is not a job for you.
It is not. It's not. But it really helps me because I can be pretty insular. So it helps me a lot of times to be like, meeting all these different people and getting outside of my comfort zone sometimes. Yeah.
Which is good to draw that, especially with just the world around us. You get more cultured, you get more open ideologies and stuff. Now, there are many different working parts to making a plane go, like refueling, things like that. What are some overlooked jobs that you think that needs more credit that you need to tell people about?
So I feel like the aircraft cleaners do not get enough, hurrahs, right? Because they're coming on board and they're picking up things that people have left behind. And it doesn't matter how many times you go through the aisles and you try to pick up trash or garbage and make sure that it's really nice and well taken care of. People get off a plane and it looks like chaos hit. It just looks like kids threw Cheerios all over the place. It looks like a madhouse. And so at the end of that, the cleaners come on board and they do such a good job. And they're always, flights are always going one after the other.
Oh, yeah.
So they're constantly being rushed. Maybe people are still getting off the plane while they're trying to send more people onto the plane. And here are these people working really hard to make sure that it looks as good as it can, right? And we don't really say thank you to them. And I feel like we don't give them enough kudos. So the cleaners.
There we go. So if you see somebody coming out cleaning and stuff like that, say thank you. Always reminded. That's why I always love taking care of my custodians at school. Because at the end of the day, they make the world work.
Yep.
They make the world work.
Imagine a place where people weren't taking care of us, and cleaning up after us, because we can be messy. Humans are messy.
Humans are messy.
Yes.
Humans are very messy.
They're worse than raccoons.
That's true. I like how we brought that back. The raccoons. The raccoons. Yep. Yeah. I have a grudge against them because of one night there was like 5 of them on the back porch and they ran off my possums, and I missed my possums, and we had them named and everything, and we knew who was what and everything. That's why we had to change the door on my back porch. So I have a little grudge against raccoons now.
That makes sense now. Now I know. I was wondering why you were so anti-coon.
It happened.
Yeah.
It happened. You're a cat mom and you're gone. You said your cat's life is automated a lot.
Yeah.
Like, what does that look like? Because you might see your cats for like a week and it's just like, they got a litter box. They need to be fed. They need water.
Yeah. I've gotten creative with it. But there's feeders that are Wi-Fi feeders. And so if I'm not there to give them their wet food, I just give them more dry, right? So even this morning, I gave them some extra feedings. That way they can just eat whatever they want to eat. So they've got automated feeders. I tried a litter box, but Luna couldn't figure it out. She kept peeing on her foot.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
And then it was all pea foot walking all around the house. You just see this little
still footprints.
Yeah. So I had to give that back. But other than that, they've got 3 litter boxes. And so most of the time they're pretty good. And then when I come back, I clean it out. Yeah. And then anything else that they need, my brother will check in or my parents will check in, or I've got friends that live near me. So they check in on the cats.
Good family care system. Yeah. Right there. That's awesome.
My family. That I think pretty
highly. You build
highly.
your community and they take care of you as you take care of them.
And then they take care of my cats, which is a win-win situation.
Because they're like our kids, man.
Yeah.
That's why it's called a cat mom and a cat dad.
Exactly.
Cats can be very needy.
And they're little babies. And they domesticated themselves, which is creepy when you think about it.
We're servants to the cats. We live in their house. They let us live in their house.
Exactly. Yeah, they're like, I chose you.
Exactly. So, and you now have to do everything for me.
Yes.
Everything.
And we do it.
Yeah, we do. We do it for pets and purrs.
Yeah. I spend so much money on my cats sometimes, and I'm like, you're not even thankful. Rude.
Come on.
Yeah.
So what are some advice in someone who's looking at joining into this field? What would you say to somebody?
I would say definitely make sure you have a support system first and foremost, right? Because it's one of those jobs to where you can be around people all day long and meet so many people, but then at the end of the day, you end up in a hotel by yourself, right? Or maybe you have just been inundated with all these different experiences, but it can be really lonely. And so not having a support system can make it really hard. and we run into that. Mental health and being a flight attendant is a big issue right now.
I can believe that with how constantly and all this stuff that's going on.
Yeah. So it can be really draining because you're getting, like every plane is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get, right?
Thank you, Forrest Gump.
So, yep, there you go. You get a few nutty ones, and at the end of the day, you just do the best you can. But my biggest thing is make sure you have a support system and be aware that if you're going to get into it, sometimes you're going to miss birthdays and sometimes you're going to miss plans because our office moves. And when your office moves, sometimes that means you don't get to where you're going, right? And so if you don't have people who love you and understand what you're doing, you can celebrate Father's Day the day after, right? You can celebrate Christmas the day after. But sometimes that's harder for people in your life to understand. So they'll take it personally, right? And you're like, how was I supposed to get back?
I can't control this.
I can't drive the plane. We're stuck, right? So just making sure that if that's something you want to get into, you can talk to your family and whoever your support system is and be able to say the benefits are going to far outweigh the...
Hey, Katie.
Hi, Katie.
My wife just came in from school.
Welcome home. But like making sure that you're supported. That's it. Yeah.
Now, there's a lot we've talked about and thrown out there. Mm-hmm. Is there any last minute things that you want to perhaps say? It doesn't have to be related to the field. It could just be, hey, here's some advice in life.
I think that, and we kind of talked about this a little bit before, like we started recording, just mainly being kind to yourself and kind to other people, like is such a big deal because a lot of times you don't know what people are going through or like
very true.
What they have on their plates. And, a lot of people meet me and they're like, oh, she's so happy and she's doing great. And yeah, I am. But then also depression and anxiety are things that I deal with. They've been with me pretty much my whole life. And that doesn't make me less of a person.
No, by no means.
It makes me a person.
Yep, exactly. That's who we are.
Yeah.
I go through my struggles all the time. And at work, you put that game face on.
Yeah. And so I think like just when you asked advice, just be kind to people, right? In general. And, treat people like you'd like to be treated. Yeah.
Definitely. Mm-hmm. Definitely. And so my big thing here, takeaway is don't be a jerk.
Don't be a jerk.
Don't be a jerk. Number one rule in life is don't be a jerk.
Don't be a dick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair, exactly. fair play.
Yes.
So
does that mean you're going to have to label it explicit?
No, we've had to label it explicit because of a bunch of stuff we said earlier. We got very much innuendos and stuff. It's okay.
My bad.
No. I don't care. That's fine. That's the freedom of doing a podcast.
Yeah.
So it's cool. So I want to thank you, Rose, for coming out and spending time with me, catching up, meeting my cats, meeting my wife again when she came in from school.
Yeah.
And just general. And we need to do stuff like this, hang out and just sit more
we do.
frequently. And Garrison's in town for a little while, and we should probably hook up with that.
I'm going to go stalk him.
You should.
Yes.
You should. Mm-hmm. But thank you. If someone wanted to reach out to you, is there like a way that we can like reach out to you and say, hey, like I got a question?
Yeah, definitely. I'm not going to, say any of my like contact information or anything, but if they reach out to you, and then I would be more than happy to give them an email.
There we go.
Yeah.
Perfect. So reach out to me. My contact information is cade, which is spelled CADE, at learningfromfriends.com. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter. If you would really like to, you can contribute to my Patreon page, which can be searched under Learning from Friends. I don't have any levels or special things to be able to contribute. I teach. I do the podcast. I am a one-man band to be able to do all the editing and everything. So just $1 or $2 a month would be deeply appreciated. Cool. Outside of that, I love each and every one of you, my listeners. You've made this a very cool adventure. So far, by this point, we're probably at a 1-year mark of doing episodes. And I'm going to go ahead and preview here saying on November 1st, I'm going to do a special episode of where I'm going to have the interview turned on me, and where I'm going to sit back and be asked questions and be interviewed by someone else. I'm going to have to turn the reins over. I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Cool.
So, but yeah, as we wind down here, the most important thing here is to let your curiosity fly high. My name is Cade Curtis, your tour guide for Learning from Friends. Have a wonderful day.